I am going to show you how to make vegan chili. Now this is a little different than my normal recipe only because instead of using canned stewed tomatoes, which are not organic, I bought regular tomatoes, which are organic, but I'll get into that one once I show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and do this because I'm using my phone and so I can show you stuff. So you're going to need a big pan, something that's going to hold. I usually make double batches because I eat it for, you know what I mean, it's like one of the meals I eat a day, that kind of thing. So I like to make stuff because I'm not a super fan of cooking, so I try and do it, make at least once one thing that's a big batch. So going to need that. You're also going to need, you can use black beans. I've got Simple Truth Organic Spicy Black Bean. I also got Simple Truth Organic Dark Red Kidney Beans. And then I got 2 onions. These are white, I believe. I also have some yellow if I would use them. And then I bought 4 of the organic tomatoes. The original recipe called for like canned stewed tomatoes, and I used to use 2 cans of those. But like I said, I'm going to use these because these stew while you're cooking anyway, so and it makes it taste much better, I think. And the ones at the store that like, because I just go to like Kroger or any store. I don't have to go to a special store to get organic stewed tomatoes, so because they don't really have them at the store. So okay, so the original recipe also calls for, I lost my train of thought, but I'm using 2 also organic crooked neck yellow squash. It also calls for red pepper. I did not get red pepper this time. Sometimes I leave it out, sometimes I put it in, sometimes I leave other things out. So today I'm not using the red pepper, but you can always use red pepper or green pepper or any other peppers that you want. It's a vegan chili, so you can put whatever vegetables you want in it, really. I try and spice it up a little bit. Sometimes I add some weird frozen vegetable mix, but today I'm using all fresh, so except for the beans. So, I'm going to cut up an onion. Okay, so as you can see, I have an onion already started. So the easiest way, in case you guys haven't, it's really, oh, okay. Losing my mind, sorry. Okay, so the easiest way to do an onion is just to cut it in half. Okay, it's already started to change shape, but cut it in half. Okay, and then just peel off the outer layer. So, not that much, but I'll show you. And I keep turning off my camera. Apologize about that. So basically you're just going to pull off the outer layer, which is like that much. So that much. If there's any like extra on the bottom, the next layer down, if there's anything extra, just peel that off too. And otherwise just push that to the side. Cut it because you want to chop it. So I cut it in, like, I turn them on their side and I cut them in stripes, if you see that. And then I just cut them this way so that it makes it into nice chopped, and I don't have to do a lot of this action, you know what I mean? I don't have to do a lot of extra work. It just basically cuts it for me, or basically chops it up for me. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this other onion, so I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. Okay, so if you can see, I've chopped them up. I kind of got them together. So that's that. I'm just going to push that to the side for now, and I need to do my tomatoes. So I'm going to show you how I start it. Usually I just take out this little core there and then do the same exact thing I did to the onion, where I cut it in half and then lay those halves on the side and then slice them and then go like that again. Okay, so you want to chop them just about as much as that. Okay, so if you can see, well, after I core it, it looks like that. I just kind of take the knife and stab it down and then take out the core. Okay. If you have a tomato core, that works awesome, but since I don't right now, I'm just cutting them. And then I chop them up just the same way, okay? And while this is going on, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put I always cook it like about medium high, okay, is on my stove. If you have gas, set it to what you think, but you want to heat up the oil, and then I'm going to add, it's like about 2 tablespoons. I just kind of eyeball it. Since we're not using meat, sometimes I add a little bit extra, so that it doesn't just taste like vegetable soup. So This is a extra virgin olive oil. There's other types of oil you can use, but this is the one I choose for this. So that's going to heat, and you can tell it's sizzling because I just washed this pan. So that's going to get going, and then I need to put garlic in it. So we're going to come down here, and I cheat, and I have fresh garlic too, which I should probably use. So I have fresh garlic. Usually I use just a version of minced garlic that's already done, but I think I'm going to, because this has been in my refrigerator, I think I'm going to go ahead and chop this up and use it. And it's just like an onion, so I'm just going to peel off the outer layer. And okay, so I have chopped up the 4 tomatoes. I chopped up the 2 onions. I also chopped up the garlic, which I'm not really good at, so I also added some minced. And then you put it on the heat for about a minute and let it simmer. That will kind of, cook it some so that it's not as strong. But that will get it going. So you put that in for about a minute, and then you're going to add this because the onions take the long, you want them to soften up and cook some, and so you're basically kind of sautéing them, and then the tomatoes as well, so that they can start to stew. So then I'm just going to add them. Okay, so if you can see, I've added it, and then I'm just going to stir it in and let that saute for about 5 minutes. And then keep stirring it, periodically. You want to make sure when you add this, just as a safety tip, adding anything to the oil, I always add the onion first because the tomatoes are kind of juicy. And you know what happens when water gets into oil, it'll splash you and you don't want to get burned. So I add I took it actually off the heat and put it over here for a minute because I wasn't ready for it yet. So when I put it back on, it wasn't super hot. So you can always do that. You can move it to the cold side for a minute and let it cool off for just a minute and then add it. But I always add the onion first and then the tomato. Okay? So we got a garlic, oil, olive oil, extra virgin, onion, and tomato in here so far. Okay? So I can't really stir with my left hand, so that's why everything's moving and what have you. So let me stir this up, and then I'm going to chop up the squash. Okay, I'm also not showing you everything as far as I wash all of my vegetables. I didn't wash the onions because I peel them, but I did wash the tomatoes and the squash. And then so that helps me actually, even though that they're organic, I figure other people probably touch them. Anything that's creepy on the outside. Plus, you can inspect them. So I noticed that this top part was kind of getting mushy, so I just broke it off, and then that way I don't have any, rotten stuff in my. It was just on the tips, so it was just where it started to get soft. So I'm going to chop these up, and how I do it is I usually cut it in half, lay the hats flat, the flat side down, and then cut them in again, and then chop that. So I'll show you in the little steps. Okay, so if you can see, I've cut it in half. I lay it flat, and then I cut that in half. And then you can just cut it like this, and that'll chop it. You just want to be, small. And then see, this is already starting to go. It's already stewing, so you just have to remember to keep stirring that. Sorry, I'm putting my finger in front of the thing. This might make my camera a little blurrier because I folded the cover over. I apologize for a second, but it helps me hold my phone. There's another ingredient, and I'll try and make, at the beginning, I will add a part where I list all the ingredients because I keep adding stuff. But it is corn. So you want to kind of leave it out. I have put it in the sink to thaw it a little bit, but then it usually fills up with water, and you don't want all that water. So I'm just going to leave it out on the counter for now. So that's still going, and I'm going to chop this. Okay, so if you can see, I've chopped them up. I did this one kind of thin. Some people like it thicker, so they don't get as cooked as quick, you know what I mean? So they stay kind of firm, but I don't really care, so I kind of chopped them up. So yeah, they just break up like that. See, and I just leave them like that, wedges. But they'll go in next. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one. Okay, so you can see why I changed to the tomatoes is being whole, not stewed, is because they're stewing quite nicely all by themselves. Like, I have not added anything but the oil, onion, and tomato, and like it's got a nice, the tomatoes have broke and released their juice, and they're stewing quite nicely. So yeah, let that go. It's probably been long enough. If you like your onions, I mean, it's going to cook more over time, but I try and get it soft. Okay, so now what I'm also going to add, which I'm just keep adding stuff, is I go to the spice cupboard, which is full of crap, and I don't need nutmeg. So I'm going to use crushed red pepper because I really like it kind of spicy. And then I'm going to use oregano. I put quite a bit of crushed red pepper in there, if you can see that. And then I have Penzeys fresh ground pepper, black pepper. So I'm going to use that. I'm trying to do this so you guys can see. And I like a lot of pepper too, so I'm going to add quite a bit. It's a double batch. This is a double batch, so I don't have a thinking about it. So I'm going to stir that in so that it's not just sitting on top. Okay, so that's going to keep going. And then I still add more spices. So I'm adding a little bit of paprika. And of course, chili powder. It's about 2 tablespoons, so I kind of eyeball it. Probably about that much. So we're going to add all that, and then we're going to stir that in. I know I'm holding the camera is not the best. We need to have a camera that I can put above. I need to get a GoPro so I can like stick it to the wall and it can aim downward. Okay. So that's doing really well. So now I'm going to add the squash, which is right here, which is all chopped up. While you're doing this, don't be afraid to add your intent. That's what kitchen witchery is. Add your intent. Add all of it to what you're touching and what you're cooking. Think whatever you want to add. Like I would assume positive thoughts, but you know what your intention of this is. What your even deeper is what your intentions of the chili is going to be for. You know what I mean? Thank the food. Any energy like that you want to add to it, that's what you do. You add it, and then that's why I use my hands. But I wash my hands a lot. So, okay. So I have stirred that up, and then we're gonna let that simmer for a little bit because we want the squash to get cooked. And then when I go to add, the next thing I'm going to add is the beans. Now, these being organic are in this one's different because I got spicy this time, so they have some extra stuff in there. They have cayenne pepper and stuff in there. So I'm probably going to leave the juice of 1 can, and depending on how juicy my chili is, might leave 2, but it seems pretty juicy right now. But we'll see after this squash breaks and cooks off. But I know I'm at least adding 1. And this is in just sea salt and filtered water. So, I usually leave 1 of these in because I usually use regular black bean, and the regular black bean is in the same stuff, just sea salt and water. So I usually add 1 of them, so that way I don't have to add a bunch of extra season, and I figure, you know, that's free. It's already in there, so there's no point of just dumping it out. But I'm going to add a little bit of sea salt now. It looks like I'm a little heavy on my. To me, it might look like I'm a little heavy on my spice, but remember I'm doing a double batch. So, yeah. And sea salt's not going to be too bad, I don't think. So, my onions are creeping up on the side of the pan. I usually try and use a pan that does not have Teflon on it because I know that has not been the best thing for people, but I don't have one right this minute that I can find. I think it's downstairs. Okay, so I have added the beans. I did leave both the cans of the spicy black beans. I left their juice because there wasn't a ton in the thing, and it was starting to dry up a little bit because of when I added the squash. I think the more stuff I add, you know what I mean? So I was like, well, I can have a little soupy, and it's going to thicken up the longer it sits, you know what I mean? Because it's a dish that you can cool and reheat and cool and reheat. So I did drain the dark kidney beans because I didn't need all that water with sea salt because I had already added some, plus there was probably some in with the spicy black beans. So I did add the black bean, but I drained the other two. Okay, so I've added the final ingredient, which is the corn. That way it's almost done. It's just going to simmer. I'm going to let it stew for a while, and then once it's hot, you can eat it immediately. You don't have to wait for any longer time. You just want it to be hot. But since I just stirred in the corn and it's kind of cold, I'm going to let it simmer for a little bit. But now I'm going to give you the list of ingredients that you need to make vegan chili, this recipe, and you can feel free to ad-lib wherever you want, okay? Okay, we're going to start with, I used 4 organic whole tomatoes. I cored them and chopped them up. I used 2 big white onions, which I chopped up, peeled and chopped up. 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. The olive oil, you can play with it a little bit. The garlic, it just depends on your taste. Remember to preheat the oil and the garlic so that it kind of smooths that out a little bit. Then, after that, I cut up 2 crooked nut yellow squashes. We also added 2 cans of spicy black bean and 2 cans of red kidney bean. Okay, then spice-wise, I wanted to show you guys so that I could remember, because I kind of added a little bit of everything. I added some sea salt. This is actually my fine grind, which I also use in my practice, but I use that. Chili powder is about 2 tablespoons, give or take. I would play with your taste buds and see what you like. I sprinkled some Cajun season in there. I also sprinkled some paprika in there. Pepper, which should probably be down here by the salt. But freshly ground pepper I like a lot, so I put some of that in. I put crushed red pepper in, and I also put some leaf oregano in. You can use Italian seasoning or whatever. Then, after that got all stewed up, then we added 1 bag of corn. Of frozen corn. You can thaw it if you can, but I just usually lay it out on the counter for a while, and by the time I go to use it, it's not as cold. And because it's so thin, it's so little, it's little niblets, so it usually heats up pretty quick. So then it's stewing up, and you can see what it looks like. And then we have vegan chili, which this much will last me for a few days.